Our last speaker before the group discussion time and our next Q&A has come all the way from Wisconsin. And last year at one of our group meetings that all the leaders get together and meet a couple of times a year here in DC. And her and her boss came and shared about Elizabeth Ministries. And I was so impressed with what they were doing to help the women who have miscarried. And this ministry was created with the help of the Catholic bishop in Milwaukee. And I asked if they could let Julie come and share this great ministry. So Julie Kresal is going to share her story, and we're going to do a quick switch on the slides and hope that the slides work. So Julie, go ahead. Thank you. No, she's working on it back there. Thanks, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you, Georgette. I am from Wisconsin, as she said. I live about 20 miles south of the frozen tundra. So I happen to be a Packer fan. And this is the first time, actually, I'm not sure if I'll be here for Q&A after. This is the first time I'm actually going back to Wisconsin to get away from snow. And let me say, 2 feet, not a big deal, people. We have it all the time. It's not a big deal. Do they know? Oh, they're trying to get my slides up. What I want to talk to you about today is Elizabeth Ministry. And it was a small ministry started in a single parish. Fortunately, it was a parish that I belonged to. And kind of in telling you what we do, I'm going to tell you my life story. And I think you will see, as I have seen and my husband has seen, everything that has happened to me has kind of led me to doing what I'm doing today. But I will say, this is my first national speaking, and you've got some wonderful speakers here today. I'm going to talk to you about the missing piece of the pro-life movement. And I really believe that if we want our opponents to believe that life is important to us, we have to remember that babies are not lost only through abortion, but 1 in 4 babies is lost through a miscarriage. Now, a lot of times, I know for myself, when you have a miscarriage, you're alone. You don't know what to do. Your husband may be there, but he certainly doesn't know what to do. So we need to help women so that they know, it's not maybe gonna reach, what to do when having a miscarriage. I'm gonna go right, since the slide's not working, right to my life story for you. My husband, Jeff, and I, we were married 17 years ago. And we thought right away, gee, we got married, we're Catholic. So of course we start a family. And that just wasn't easy for us. We tried for several years, and it turned out that I had just a simple problem that some medication would help. So I went on some medication, and I was able to become pregnant shortly after moving into our new house, which everybody told us, new house, new baby, and for us it did work. And we were so excited. We told everybody. We had prayed for this. We had hoped and dreamed for this. And unfortunately, just a few months after, on October 16th, I came home from work, and I was working in a law office, which is a pretty stressful job, but a job that I loved and thought I'd do forever. And I told my husband I just had a stomach ache. I just feel like I have the flu. And I went into the bathroom, and I delivered our son, Dylan, at 17 weeks. Now, I was 33, but still young enough I didn't know what was going on. My mom had died when I was 22, which I thought would be the most horrific thing I deal with in my life. And as I watched my husband have to cut the umbilical cord of our 17-week-old son, I knew that I hadn't suffered the most traumatic thing I would in my life. Luckily, my husband is a doctor. He's a veterinarian. So he was able to call my OB and say, she just delivered. And he cut the umbilical cord, and he was able to help me. I still had to go through, just like a pregnancy, delivering the placenta. But I was able to stay at home. However, we had our 17-week-old baby, and I'm not in the hospital. And we had no clue. We didn't know what to do. And one of these slides, which I'm not going to pull up, is what most women do. We got a Cool Whip container because we didn't know what to do with our son. We knew that's not what we wanted for him, but there wasn't anything we could do right then and there. And it was more important that we stay at home and be together than to try to find something else. And there are many women in that same situation that will then keep a child in their freezer, buried in the backyard in that container, because they don't know what to do. Luckily for me, the next day I went to my OB, and he knew that we were Catholic and that we were very much in line with our faith and wanted to follow our beliefs. But even with that, he still didn't let us know, and many states don't, that you have a right to take your child with you. We didn't know. He took the baby and said, do you want us to do any testing? And we said, no, it really didn't matter to us. What happened, just, we want to honor our son. But again, we didn't know what to do. I didn't know that I should have called a funeral director. So our son, like many babies, is buried in a communal grave, which anybody familiar with Catholic teaching, I was not at the time. That is against Catholic teaching. Every life deserves human dignity. And in order for us to give our son that human dignity, we should have called a funeral director and had that baby buried. Now, very few hospitals tell anybody this, and that's why we do what we do at Elizabeth Ministry. When we get a call from the hospital, one of our ministers, and if you would open a chapter in your parish, you would have ministers trained, and they would go to the woman or the couple and explain their options and their rights according to whatever faith they are, so that they can come through the experience with dignity, knowing they did the right thing. Now, luckily, shortly after that, I did become pregnant very quickly with our daughter, and I'm happy to say she's 14 years old. However, I went on bed rest with her right before Easter, and she was born 6.5 weeks premature, and I actually thank God for that because I was on bed rest for 26.5 weeks. Elizabeth ministers during that time visited me at my home. They brought us meals, they fed my husband, they washed our clothes, they cleaned our house, whatever we needed them to do, the Elizabeth ministers from our parish were there. My daughter, Jillian, and we'd see pictures of them too, but trust me, she's cute. She looks just like me. You can go ahead if you want a whole bunch. Go right there. Go back one. That is, so Jillian is 14. She was born, like I said, 6.5 weeks premature. She was born on September 11th, 2001. So we knew right there, it was actually pretty traumatic enough having a preemie, but then to have that birthday. And the slide that was before this, after Jillian, we decided we knew it takes us forever to have children, so we decided to try within a year. And I was pregnant again very quickly. But unfortunately, on January 2nd, miscarried with our second son, and that is our second son, Jordan. And by then, I was very good friends with Jeannie Hanman and our Elizabeth ministers at our parish, and I knew a little bit better what to do. So the first thing my husband did was call Jeannie, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and she came, and she was at the hospital, and by the time she got there, my husband was rocking what they told us was our baby. And Jeannie looked at it and went right to the nurse and said, that's not their baby. That is a blood clot. She just passed the baby in the commode. Now somehow you need to get that, we have to get that blood clot from that father and tell him that is not his son. And you need to get that child out of that commode and hand that to the parents so that they understand that this is their son. And it actually, the second time with an Elizabeth minister, and especially with Jeannie having founded Elizabeth Ministry with her husband, was just such a better experience than we had the first time. We were in a hospital. We had our son. We were able to hold him, rock him. The hospital that we were at was able to take pictures for us. We have footprints. And then the slide in the middle is a keepsake box that they gave us. There's a little seashell Christmas ornament that has his footprints on it. And we were also able to plan a funeral. And at the same time as Jordan's funeral, we planned a funeral for our first son, Dylan. And they are buried in a children's cemetery. That's part of another cemetery. We have a joint headstone for them, but they're actually not buried together because Dylan was buried communally. However, he's maybe 20 feet away from Jordan, buried under a tree, which gives us a little bit of peace knowing that they're together. After I gave birth to our second son, I was rushed into surgery. I had had a twisted ovary, and if they hadn't fixed it, I was in some serious trouble. So they rushed me into surgery, and then while I was in surgery, my oldest daughter, Jillian, which that's her that I'm holding there after 3 days, I got to hold her for the first time. Jillian was about 2.5 when I had Jordan, and she was in the elevator with my sister and my dad, and just out of coincidence, my Elizabeth minister happened to get in the elevator. She didn't know I was in the hospital and didn't know that I had miscarried and was in surgery. But she knew Jillian and said to Jillian, "Where's mommy?" And through that, my dad was able to figure out that this was somebody that I knew, and they were able to take my Elizabeth minister to my husband to sit with my husband and grieve with him and to pray for me. Shortly after I miscarried with Jordan, the doctor gave me the news that pregnancy just was impossible for me. I could no longer take the fertility medication I had been taking, and I just had to accept that we had 2 in heaven and 1 with us. And I had a conversation with Jeannie, and I said, "Jeannie, that's not right. He is not right. God has put it on my heart. I will have another child, and I will have a daughter." And she has told me since then that she walked away from there shaking her head with a broken heart, not knowing how she was going to tell her friend that I was dreaming and that we were going to have 1 child. Well, you see that there's 2 of them there in that picture. One that looks exactly like me, and the other picture is the 4 of us in Hawaii a few months ago. The older one with the dark hair looks exactly like me. And our 11-year-old Caitlin has bright red hair. She doesn't quite look like me, but my husband's mom is 100% Irish, so Caitlin got the Irish red hair. She is absolutely the light of our lives. She is such a joy. There is nothing about life that she doesn't love, and you meet Caitlin and you can tell she was definitely our gift from God. And I will never forget the day I told Jeannie that I was going to have a baby and my OB, because both of them, you could have scooped them up because it was not possible. The day that I found out that I was pregnant with Caitlin, I was actually in Mass. We had gone to Mass that morning and went home, and we were getting a new bishop in the Green Bay Diocese. So I wanted to meet the new bishop. Why not? It's a Sunday afternoon. I skipped the Packer game. I do that once in a while. So I went to meet the bishop, and I had an elderly lady that lived next door, and she wanted to go, and her husband didn't, so the 2 of us went. And the gospel was when the baby leapt in the womb. And I sat there next to my neighbor, and I just got this really weird feeling. And the bishop kept looking at me. I didn't know why. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. I'd never seen him, which now he's out here, I think. Bishop Zubik? Yeah. And he just kept staring at me. Well, afterwards, I waited 2 hours to meet him. And afterwards, he told me I looked like his niece, or So he thought that's who I was, surprising him. And I said, no, I'm sorry, not her. But then I stopped at the drugstore on the way home. And let me tell you, I bought, I think, 12 pregnancy tests. But I was certain, God let me knew. I knew I was having another baby. And sure enough, I went home that day and found out I was pregnant. Definitely, she is our miracle from God. She has made our family complete. One last story that I want to leave you with that ties in with not only miscarriage, and we need to respect the lives of every child and every baby, no matter when they are born, what week of gestation. When we had the funeral service for my sons, we had the service on January 23rd. It was a Thursday. We probably could have had it on the 22nd, but of course in the Catholic world, that's faith formation night, so you can't do that. So we had it on the 23rd. At the end, we, of course, get to carry a very small burial vessel that had my son in it. And you can imagine, if you know somebody that's had a miscarriage, I clutched that to my chest, and I did not want to let him go. And it took a lot. The funeral director was a friend of ours, and it took a lot for him and my husband to convince me that, he was going to take care of our son and that it would be okay. And there was a gentleman there, and he came up to Jeannie afterwards and said, I have been pro-choice my entire life. I have always supported the pro-choice movement. After I saw what that mother went through, I am now pro-life, and I will support all life. So even through honoring our miscarried children, we were able to change somebody's mind. And even if that's all we change is one mind, it's one at a time. And we now have somebody to help us in the pro-life movement. Thank you.